significantly going to impact our general fund costs, and we really need a general tax to address it. And are we money ahead just going after a general tax and being more assured that we get it passed because we could educate folks of the need and get the support of the community, or go after roads, which we might have a few people ticked off about paying a little bit more for gas and registration with their cars, and that's how many more people we got to pick up at the next election. It's we have to do both these things, and maybe all three of them. Maybe all three of them is the right thing to do, but we can't just kind of kick this can down the road and make a decision tomorrow. I think we ought to be making this decision today, and with this full board's wisdom and some of the comments we heard from the public. As far as working with Hollister, from my recollection from presentations in the past, was that if they voided their 1% tax, they would have to go out to a ballot again. And even though they won overwhelmingly, they wouldn't do that. They're not going to take that risk. So we're looking at the unincorporated ballot only. And we got to sell it as far as the benefit that the unincorporated areas are going to receive. That means improved roads, improved fire safety, improved sheriff's patrol, and so forth. I think that's how we sell it, and then that will bring our sales tax up to where the two cities are, and maybe we see how SB1 and how we implement SB1 into our roads and some of these other revenue sources that, if we're successful with the business license fee, that hopefully people will see a difference in everything.
So you're asking direction of the board. Do we want to do a general sales tax and the unincorporated area first? That's my leaning. I just think a special sales taxes would be hard for COG to pass. I just think that there's a lot of folks that are concerned about how the state is going to utilize SB1 funds. There's rumors out there that they're already diverting monies to other pet projects. Whether it's factual or not, it's a be hard to get 66%. Whereas later on, we're talking about this fire station, and we're going to have to staff that somehow. And we don't have the funds to do it. Maybe you're right, Supervisor. Maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. And we need to take it to the public and ask the public, do you support a general sales tax because of blah, 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 blah? And if they say no, then maybe we should tell the state of California we don't want that jail. Maybe we should tell the residents that we don't need that fire station if they say no to us. Maybe we should go in that direction.
You're scaring me.
Well, I mean, you're right. We're at this point where you have revenues and expenditures that's about that much, and every year it gets worse. That gap widens every year. Mm-hmm. And now we have these new costs that going to need it to the jails, going to need it to other stuff, fire department. I will support you that we explore first a general sales tax. Okay. I will support that. Now, okay. Supervisor Munzers?
So, is it the request that we set what percentage we're going to go after now, or can we empower the committee that we have in place already to do some polling, find out from the public what I'm trying to figure out how to say this. Use the polling company to find out what support we have and at what level of support, and then determine whether we go for a quarter cents, half cents, or a full 1%. Do some background study first, and then the committee can come back to us.
I think it's a wonderful idea, and I think we need to hire a professional to do this for us.
I really think if we're serious about it, let's hire a professional. Otherwise, let's not kid ourselves and let's move on to the next item. I guess Supervisor Munzer is presenting a question to the committee. What's the committee's response?
I kind of want to hear from Supervisor Rivas again, and to, you know, if there's any sort of a discussion as far as going for, because you're advocating the special tax.
Yeah, and I will still advocate for a special tax. I have no problem going to, you know, general sales tax, but we can't do it haphazardly. It needs to be well organized. I have no problem making a motion to bring this agenda item back. Let's get some substance in this item as far as going out for a bid to get some consultants. And the only way I'm going to support this is if we're well organized and we have a tight message. I want to know exactly what we're going to be spending these monies on. You know, I may not be in full agreement on what we, you know, are advocating for here, but certainly we need to. That's why I think it's very important to measure the opinion of local residents to see what is important to them, whether it's public safety, whether it is roads, whether, you know, parks. I mean, I can't answer that. I have my priorities, but certainly those of the general public could be different.
I think that's a good point myself. I think we need to have, because I'm not, you know, I have no clue. I have no clue what would be supported out there.
Right.
So is this item agendized in such a way that we can direct the ad hoc committee to spend money to find out information from us?
No, but we can bring that back either if it's going to be more than $10,000 to hire a consultant, then we could bring it back to the board, and if it's less than $10,000 to get somebody started, then we could start with the CAO's approval.
And we've got to do this quickly, Mr. Chair. I mean, we're a year away.
I apologize. What did you say?
I said we've got to do this quickly. We're a year away from an election. You know, we got to.
Right. I agree. So let's put this on the next available agenda item, including approval of expenditure of funds for a consultant to help us out. Is that okay with the board?
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate, Supervisor Medina brought up that we're working on, you know, a business license requirement as well, and it's going to be pretty broad as far as what we're trying to do. But that only mitigates the cost of, you know, what, you know,
You could start
business activity is in the unincorporated areas.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay. Yes.
for clarity, so is the board directing that we bring this item back and that we present options for the formulation possibly of a general sales tax along with other special taxes or revenue?
No, I think it's general tax.
Just general tax.
And expenditure of funds to hire a consultant
Okay.
to do the research.
Yeah.
To see what level of service, what level of the public support.
Okay. Any particular percentage or just options that may?
Let the consultant,
Okay.
based on
Very
their
good.
research, give a recommendation to the board.
Okay.
I don't see where it would hurt to get the viability of the special tax information as well, if that's even within reach, because we had that last time, and we were right there, and then we lost a little bit of ground, but just so we could weigh the two.
I would recommend that we hold off until COG discusses this further. We can move forward with the general tax, and we still have enough time to do the special tax right behind it. So there's no problem. Once we hire a consultant and once we move forward, within a month or two, if we want to go on a special tax, we could just put it right around the back, and it wouldn't be a problem. But let's give the county the opportunity to start the general tax discussion. And the special tax will not be forgotten. It will be brought back. It will.
I just don't want to see us do both.
We're not going
Myself.
to. I understand. Yeah.
You can't do both.
And Supervisor Munson?
So may I ask the COG representatives, where is the COG board in their process? Are they going to hire a consultant to do polling again to see what the level of support is out there?
Well, Mary, we're still at the early stages of discussion. We asked Mary to do some research, and she's going to make a presentation at the next COG meeting.
So we will be running kind of
Yep.
concurrent together. So I don't see a problem with that. You know, the COG representatives can report back to this full board what they are finding out, and we can go forward and study for a general tax for our own purposes.
And I think that's what I'm trying to say, but in a different way. I think, yeah. Mary, you want to respond?
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely right. We're at our last board meeting, we did talk about the potential for putting together a request for proposals to do some polling to start to answer some of the same questions that we're having about what level would the tax be, what would the duration be, the number of years, that kind of thing, and also whether we would get support in the November 2018 election or November 2020. So we can look at potential voters in both pools. So, yeah.
Well, then that begs the question that you're right, we should just do it together then. I mean, because at the COG level, we could have San Juan Bautista and the City of Hollister share some of the cost of the consultant too then. I know it's wishful thinking, but...
Well, I'll be in touch with your CAO to talk about what we can do.
Thank you, Mary. Okay. So, do we want to put them together, Supervisor Patel?
Sure.
Okay, no, I don't. I think COG needs to go forward and study their special tax. We need to go forward and study our general tax.
Okay, perfect. Is every supervisor in agreement? By absence means yes. Okay, yes. Thank you, Lloyd.
Thank you very much.
Okay, let's go to the next item. Number 15, discuss, consider, and approve anti-bully policy. Georgia?
Escape.
Good morning, supervisors. What we have for you before you today is the result of a multi-year collaborative effort that had a lot of fits and starts with the county and SEIU working through this policy. Again, as you can see from the history, this was something the county agreed to several years ago to enter into discussions with SEIU and consider whether it was appropriate to bring something forward for the board's consideration. And as this started, I think I picked this up partway through. And I think there were some fears on both sides with respect to SEIU potentially wanting something very strong, very bulletproof, so to speak. The county being concerned that we don't create something that just causes a nightmare and just sucks up all available staff resources. So what we bring to you today is kind of a leap of faith, and that's why I focus on the collaborative effort piece. This policy is somewhat abbreviated in nature. And this was an idea to where let's get a start, let's see where the issues are. We don't see a lot of this, but our current harassment policy is a harassment policy based on protected class. There isn't anything with respect to bullying contained in there. So if someone brings forward a complaint, generally you would hope that this could get resolved, but HR really cannot act and push a department to do something, force a management decision. So that said, what you have here is we're responding to state law that does require anti-bullying training to be part of the sexual harassment training that's required by law. There isn't a specific state law that requires us to have this policy. However, it does kind of represent a culture of inclusion rather than exclusion. And that's the reason we felt that this policy, I think our last discussion with SEIU was, let's try this, let's see how it goes. County's concerned, this policy, we've brought forward something to you. It is not grievable. There are not monetary penalties. Where that goes in the future, I think that's up to us to police and make sure that we have a workforce that doesn't support this kind of culture. So we bring that forward to you today for your consideration. I do want to also say that at the conclusion of our meetings with SEIU, because that's where the agreement started, is we did take this to the other bargaining groups for an opportunity to meet and confer. None of them had an issue or requested to meet and confer over this issue. So we have done that, reach out to the other bargaining units. So I bring this to you if you have questions.
Supervisor Medina? Tello? Munzer?
So in the staff recommendation, it talks about approving this, and then with possibly a 3-year sunset clause to see how it's going. Are we able to keep the committee in place? And I want to thank the committee for working on this, and then have a time limit where the policy doesn't necessarily sunset, but it just comes back before the board with a review on how it's going.
Well, this item doesn't state that, but we do have regular meetings with SEIU. You could direct that we do an annual meeting to kind of review where we've been. We have to be careful about the statistics we give out, but we can talk numbers and natures. And a lot of times, if a member of theirs has an issue, they may be aware of it. So I mean, there's some possibilities. And the idea, again, this 3 years is sometimes 1 year it just gets going, and you need to give it a little time. And that goes back to where I was saying, where do we go? Do we have something so ironclad that it is just administratively burdensome, or something so vague that it has no real teeth? What this policy is, we believe, and tried to get to, is the best of both worlds, defining workplace bullying, explaining the county's policy, providing a reporting procedure, and putting requirements on HR. If those issues come to HR, if they're not resolved within the department, then HR needs to follow up with the parties. So there are some requirements there, and that was the idea. It's a compromise to see what we can do. The board can certainly direct us to meet on a specified basis, an ad hoc basis. The board can direct this to come back.
CEO?
Yeah, Mr. Chair. Yes, I would recommend keeping the language in there, the sunset language in there, but maybe adding that we would come back on a yearly basis to review it and have the committee basically, 'cause there's going to be tweaks, I'm sure. There's going to be some things we're going to work on both sides. I think that would be the proper way to move forward with this item.
So I would also like to thank the committee. Let me explain who's been on that committee. It originally was Al DeVos and Brent Cardell, who was replaced with Ted Baran, myself, and from SEIU we had Mark Wyrick, we had Denise Quintana, Susie Caston, and Joe Miranda. And we had fits and bouts of spirited discussion and other times where we were all on the same page. In the end, we think this is something we felt comfortable recommending to your board.
And there was was there any representatives from the other unions?
No, there was not, because this was the result of a settlement. We did take it to the other unions.
Okay. Thank you. Supervisor Rivas?
Questions at this time?
Thank you. Okay. Let me open up to the public. Denise?
Good morning, Honorable Dela Cruz and Board of Supervisors. The policy before you is a result of a grievance settlement between county and SEIU 521. The committee was formed 3 to 4 years ago, not only with SEIU members, including myself, SEIU representatives, and leadership, but also members of your administrative team, members of your management team. And at the beginning, there was, Meg was involved a little bit. There was Meg managers at the beginning of the process. We did this in hopes of looking at putting in place a workplace abuse prevention policy. It's been a lot of work, but well worth it to be able to bring this policy to you for your approval. It shows the commitment by the Board of Supes and the current county administration to prevent these types of issues in the workplace. I'm here before you today showing SEIU and our full support for this policy in hopes of your approval and implementation as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the public? No? I'll bring it back. Okay. What are the wishes of the board?
I'll move for staff recommendation approving the anti-bullying policy as recommended by the committee.
With a review at the end of the year?
And
With periodic reviews.
And does it have a sunset clause of 3 years or no?
It with the 3-year sunset clause, so the board could review the and extend the policy after the trial period.
Second.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carries. Georgia?
Question. With this, I just want to make sure we're all clear on the 3-year sunset. So if I understand the board's direction, it is within approximately 3 years, prior to 3 years from today, you're directing staff to come back, present information, make modifications, recommend something different.
Right. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And even at the yearly presentation, the board will have the opportunity to make changes with agreement with SEIU on those changes.
So we'll report back at 1-year intervals, and the board will have the ability to end this policy based on communication from staff and the respective bargaining units at the end of 3 years, or
Continue it.
continue that.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Georgia.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item. Oh, we're going to take a 5-minute break.
Okay.
You know, so interesting. You always have a. Come closing.
That's what I just wondered.
Okay, let's move on to number 16. Staff will present an update on the proposed fire station number 3 project and discuss the latest budget and cost estimates.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, this item, the board had requested for the ad hoc committee to meet and discuss options and funding options to be a little bit more specific in regards to which direction the ad hoc would like to pursue. So we have our RMA department, Adam Goldstone, our CRP manager, meet with the ad hoc and administration. We discussed possible options. There's 3 options, which Adam will discuss right now again with you, and came up with a solution for moving forward with Fire Station 3. So I'd like to go ahead and hand this off to Adam. Adam?
Hi, good morning. As we discussed a few meetings ago, the fire station project is, nearing completion of design, and there are some, budget issues that have been discovered due to just the amount of work that needs to happen out there. To better address what some of those, or where some of those costs are going per that last meeting, I've included some estimates in your packet that break out basically 3 components of the project. There's the site work, the remodel, renovation of the existing residence, and then the new apparatus bay structure. And you can see that there really isn't a whole lot of cost that goes into the site or the renovation. They're pretty straightforward. They're pretty basic. They're all things that are essential to the successful operation out there. Now, the new apparatus bay is currently designed and estimated there with 3 bays, equipment bays. And where that came from was in, discussing with the fire department about what sort of equipment that they would need to stage out there to handle the types of calls they currently get or that they expect to get out there, just to maximize the efficiency and obviously time-saving response out there. So all of that brings the project, to a little over $1 million. That does include, some contingency and things in there, that it's just prudent to have accounted for. So what we also looked at to try to see where costs could be saved was reducing the apparatus bay down to either 2 bays or even 1 bay. Again, because there's just not a whole lot of money to really take out of the other 2 components and still have a successful project out there. So going down to 2 bays brings the total cost down about $150,000. In meeting with the ad hoc committee, I think that was something they were interested in pursuing, and that still leaves us with a cost difference. The balance in the fire impact fee fund is around, I want to say $670,000. So that leaves us about $300,000 difference. Now, that difference could be made up in the immediate term with general fund loan that is paid back as the fire impact fees, accrue. The accrual rate is roughly $10,000 a month. So that would be a payback of, 2.5 to 3 years to replenish the general fund loan for this. One of the concerns with that, though, is that you will not have, obviously, any fire impact fee balance for at least 3 years, right, until it starts accruing. So there would be some time where if any equipment is needed, there won't be the funds there from that fund. So just something to keep in mind. This design comes from a consultant that is well-versed in fire station design. That's why we selected them. We've done studies out there. We had to do, topographic surveys, drainage surveys, hazardous materials, water quality, and all that. So all of those recommendations and requirements are included in this design. If you have any questions on the specific operation out there, the fire chief is here. Any other questions for me about the cost?
Thank you. Supervisor Munzer?
So the subcommittee or ad hoc committee has studied this quite a bit. I think Adam mentioned that our recommendation is a 2-bay station at this point, and probably doing some kind of general fund loan to make up the funding difference to be paid back by the impact fees over the time
Thank you.
period. Thank you.
Supervisor Patel?
This is a hard one. This turned out to be a project that ended up being quite a bit more money than what we anticipated, and we've been working on it. I give credit to Mr. Goldstein for doing all this work and presenting the options to this to the full board, and it's just hard for me. I'd be a lousy congressman spending more money than what you have, but they could do it, but we can't. But we have to know going full well that this is the cost. It's a deplete our fund, and then if something happens with an engine, we have nothing to fall back on. This is not that easy of a decision.
Supervisor Medina?
Chief, can you step to the podium?
Morning, Board.
What are the advantages and disadvantages of a 3 versus 2?
Okay, so for the particular area, you're looking at a water system that's not robust like you would have in a municipality where you have fire hydrants every 400 feet. The configuration of a 3 apparatus bay was for the specific fact to deploy a structural fire engine, a wildland fire engine, and a water tender to the affected area. Areas like Comstock Estates and Four Corners, you have an established water system out there where you don't have to deploy a water tender, but that's just 2 areas in a vast North County area that you're going to automatically, in your run card, once there's a fire discovered, you're going to deploy a water tender and whatever type fire engine to put that fire out. So that was the purpose behind it.
Okay, so what I'm looking at is it's an extra or an additional $150,000 to create or build an additional bay. So if I look at about just roughly 15 years, right? So that's about $10,000 a year that we would spend extra. With the proximity of the locations out there, it behooves me, we've been talking about this, that we're settling for something that's 2/3 of a finished product. And I look at it saying, let's do it right. Let's find this extra $150,000. These people are paying into the fund, and we have to figure out how to do it right. Let's not settle for anything but the best.
Thank you, Supervisor Medina. Supervisor Rivas?
So I'll remind you of that.
Hold on, Supervisor Munzer. Hold on. You okay?
Okay. I just wanted to I'll remind Supervisor Medina when it comes time to build the South County Fire Station that he wants nothing but the best.
Fine by me.
All right, guys. Okay, that's a good humor. Supervisor Rivas?
Right. So I rarely, I don't want to base it. You look at the cost. Obviously, the cost is a concern, But, these projections, I don't rely on my own projections because, shoot, I can't project out 5 months or 12 months of anything. So obviously I rely on our staff heavily when it comes to these estimates. But I think from a public safety standpoint, certainly I have no problem moving forward with the 3-bay concept. Just because from a public safety standpoint, I think that is, in the best long-term interest of our local residents, especially if there is a structure fire. I remember when I was a paid call firefighter and we had, to do a mutual aid call with CAL FIRE out in North County area. It was challenging, extremely challenging, in trying to move all of our equipment from within the city out to North County, and then CAL FIRE moving their equipment. So certainly, I think that in this location or in any location throughout the county in the future, we want to, do the best we can to provide, necessary equipment to address these emergencies. And so I just think, that's just a common sense thing. And so that's where I'm at the moment.
Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor Rivas. Open up to the public. Anyone from the public?
Marty Richmond. I don't have a horse in this race. I don't really have an opinion. But I would like to ask a question of the engineer and the people making the estimates and the fire chief through the board, through the chairman. One thing that hasn't been addressed is if we do a 2-bay, two things. One is if we do a 2-bay operation, what will be the added cost of putting on another bay in the future? In other words, it's not the same as building it at the same time. If it's $150,000 now, and you got to tear a wall down, if you want to put another bay in, you're going to have additional cost at some time in the future. The second is, what's the operational plan for the fighting the fires if that piece of wild land equipment is not there? You still have to get it, so it'll have to come out of somewhere else, I assume. That may be a bad assumption. That's why I'm asking the question. I don't have any horse in the race. I just want to know whether or not how that works out. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Marty. And anyone else from the public? None. I'll bring it back. Hey, Adam. You want to answer that question from the member of the public?
Sure. Regarding doing it later, the structure as designed right now and as proposed is a prefabricated steel building. So the design right now has the bays, and then on the sides are the support rooms for their storage and equipment, parts and that sort of thing. So to add another bay on the outside, we would have to reconfigure the space so that it could be added on later, so that there isn't a parts room or something in between the bays. It's important to have them all continuous. We would also have to design it now to hopefully accept that third bay. We can't just really chop it off and then add one on later. It would have to be designed now to accept that because of the way the columns and the beams would be. We'd have to basically make a lean-to later. And so it would look not really unfinished right now if we were to go with the 2-bay with the intent of adding a third bay later, but it would look, most people probably wouldn't notice, but there would have to be something in the design that allows that third bay to come on later without looking too much, like an afterthought. And it's not just an aesthetics thing. Again, it's a operations thing. Can't have those rooms divide the bays, so we would have to find a way to keep those bays continuous when the third one is added on.
Thank you, Adam. Supervisor Rivas?
Yeah, so I think this is a question more for Chief. And so obviously when we're going through this whole issue, learning about the different, insurance rates, is it the ISO rates?
Correct.
And lack of fire protection in the North County area will certainly impact residents in the way of, the highest insurance rates. Mm-hmm. So when you talk about 2-bay versus 3-bay. Obviously, you have a 3-bay, you can have the water tender. How does that factor into the ISO rating? Will it factor into the ISO rating?
As far as pump capacity, they take that into consideration. However, because we will have a structure fire Type 1 engine out there, it's going to bring that ISO rating down from the 10 that it's at right now. All you need is 5 miles from any structural firefighting, primarily operational fire component to the residents that are affected. And if you're within that 5-mile radius, which that will make most of the high dollar value areas out there affected by that, it will bring the rating down. Now, just because we don't have a Type 3 wildland off-road rig out there, it wouldn't affect the ISO rating much. I don't even think it would affect it at all. But as far as deploying that piece of equipment, I'm very hesitant in leaving it outside in the elements because it can corrode and depreciate a lot faster than you would if you kept it housed. And to answer Mr. Richmond's question, where would I deploy that from? I would probably deploy that from Station 1, as it is right now. That, or I hate to even mention this, probably erect a carport for the time being while it's being utilized during wildland season.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, because I just pulled something up and said the ISO rating. Let's see what it says. I just lost it. It says that the coverage is based on multiple factors, including the quality of the area's fire department, the water system, and the placement of hydrants in those areas. So, okay, cool. Thank you, Chief. I appreciate it.
Supervisor Patella.
That kind of answered a few of my questions, but, the problem we also have is we could have 3 bays and 3 engines out there, and guess what the manning is would be? 2 guys, and they're going out with the first engine, and the water tender's not going out anyway. And then when the 2 guys get out there, they're going to watch that house burn down. But, it's, I don't know. I see a lot of fire departments throughout the state that has 2 bays. It's sufficient. We're not going to have the staffing. We're not going to have the personnel to bring the extra apparatus, unless we look at alternative fire, department, options. But it's, if we're go with 3 bays, we can't afford 2 bays today. So we got to talk about how we're funding this thing going forward too, and if we're going to take that risk, and that does play back to our sales tax. As far as adequate staffing to move the apparatuses. Right now, we don't have that. And we're not going to have it next go around with whether we renew a contract with Hollister, enter into a JPA, or do another alternative fire protection service.
Thank you, Supervisor Patella. In fact, I was going to say that too. That I'm going to favor the 2-bay because of exactly what you're saying. Is that it would have been nice if we had a sales tax election right now. And then if the public would have supported, would say, hey, let's do a 4-bay if we have to, because the public, demanded that we do that. But unfortunately, we don't know the answer to that question. And a 2-bay, to me, it's a good compromise. What's the pleasure of the board?
I'll make the motion to direct staff to go forward with a 2-bay fire station at the Rosemarada site.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against?
Nope.
Motion carries 3-2 on a 2-bay.
All right. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Move on. Number 17, approve a final map for TSM 16-95, track 335, commonly known as Carlson subdivision located at 1450 Santa Road.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, with the administration taking the lead within some direction in RMA. I had our management analysts spearheading some administrative services and duties, and then we brought Larry and James on. But he's been kind of spearheading this particular project, so I wanted him to go ahead and start the a discussion with your board on the Clower development, and then probably ask Larry or James if they have anything further to add to them.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the board, you have before you the item related to the Clower development. I can confirm for you that all of the fees, the final maps, the bonding information that was required for this project have been submitted, completed, and paid for. We worked very closely with county council staff, both our internal staff and special outside counsel, to review all of the language with regard to the HOAs. We also had our engineering staff work very closely with representatives from the development team, both legal counsel and engineering, to make sure all of the bonding language was appropriate and that all of the final maps were signed in a timely manner. We got all of that completed on Friday. So before you is that final final map for your approval. Jim Pulfer from our engineering team is present, and so are Larry and James, who helped with this project throughout.
Louis, I just got one quick question. There's no, I'm looking at the conditions, there's no deferments on this? Everything's being paid?
That's correct. Okay. The only thing that we're going to be collecting are the fees. The only thing that we're going to be collecting later are the fees for the permits as they are pulled.
That's understandable.
Mm-hmm.
That's understandable. Okay. Supervisor Medina? Supervisor Patello?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. Two, actually. I read through this, and I didn't see where they're required to pay that surcharge on the property tax year in, year out to help pay for governmental services that we have with other developments and other development agreements that we have going forward.
Okay. Jim, do you want to come forward and you want to aware of that? Or any of us aware of that?
Which I don't know.
Or does Shirley want to speak to that? That's a question for Shirley.
Shirley Murphy, Deputy County Counsel. I don't believe that the revenue neutrality issue was required as a condition of approval. Typically, for the smaller typically it's been the really large subdivisions that have had that and have had a DA. There wasn't a DA negotiated with this. I believe it's 6 lots.
6 lots.
Yeah, 6 lots. So it's not of the scale that we have been typically requiring that level of funding, and that would have been adopted through most likely a community financing or community facilities district, CFD. But in this case, that wasn't contemplated by the Planning Commission when they approved the tentative map.
They're catching a huge break on the affordable housing portion. Huge break.
They're paying on the
They're paying $4,500 per unit, and that's still pretty reasonable. But that's kind of set with another development, and I hope that we're getting to the end where we're not having that, where there's some meaningful contributions to affordable housing. And then, it kind of concerns me that even, that 1 or 2 houses out there for a small subdivision, but it's still a major subdivision. And where I would draw the line is between major and minor subdivisions, but then at the same time, you could make an argument that they need the fire department just as bad as a house in Santana Ranch or potentially Del Webb or wherever. And I think we have to, until we get our revenue, house in order, expect that it's a cost that has to be added on.
Understood.
Thank you,
So just a little legal note. Basically, the conditions of approval are imposed on the tentative subdivision map, At the time that you get to the final map stage, it's really a ministerial act. As long as they've met the conditions of approval on the tentative map, the county approves the final map. So the opportunity to impose conditions was back at the time that the tentative map was approved.
I see. Okay. And then the second question I have, in regards to impact fees, they're not locked into today's impact fees. They're, whatever we adopt in the future, they'll be required to pay the additional
That's correct.
changes.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Just a side note, Louis. On Supervisor Patello's note, they're agreeing to was it 45 or 46 for the affordable per unit? What is it? 4,500 per unit.
4,500 per unit.
Can we, and not for this one, but moving forward for other projects, can we not accept the affordable in lieu of fee and just put straight out that you will pay when? No, you can't, right? You can't do that.
No, because I think
That's one of the things that's in the process is to believe that we need to have a nexus study to establish the fee for the affordable housing.
Yeah.
Right, and just to that point, we have been working with the consultant regarding the impact fees. The one we haven't done is the affordable housing fee for precisely that reason, because we don't have a nexus for it yet.
Yeah, we can't do it. I understand. Okay.
No, sir.
Supervisor Munzer?
Okay, so my question, first of all, did we have any say at the tentative map stage or do we have any say at the tentative map stage on what a project looks like, or is that strictly at the Planning Commission?
That's a Shirley question.
So it's at the Planning Commission level unless the item gets appealed. So if the applicant is unhappy or if neighbors are unhappy, any interested person can appeal it to the board, and then the board takes it as a de novo.
So we need to make policy ahead of time.
Yeah, in
that
the ordinances.
directs the Planning Commission in such a way. So I think what I would like to do at a future meeting is discuss at what point does the cost neutrality come into play, be it once it's determined that it's a major subdivision, which is anything over 5 lots is my understanding, or do we set some other arbitrary number that once they hit 20 lots, then the cost neutrality. So I think that's something we need to have a discussion of.
We can discuss it this afternoon as well in the discussion item regarding CSAs and CFDs regarding the potential option of having a countywide CFD that individual subdivisions can annex into, even the smaller subdivisions.
Okay. So now I see there is a homeowner association being established.
Yes, sir.
For this project?
Yes, sir.
Is the homeowner association going to be responsible for street lights and the maintenance of the
yes,
streets?
Sir.
Okay.
That was a specific discussion and area of discussion that we had with the developer and our legal counsel. Yes.
Okay.
Because we were very clear, it was made very clear as a matter of policy, if you will, that no CSAs were to be created.
Okay, and I was going to go there next. So this homeowner association will survive the built out of the project and be responsible basically forever for the street lights and maintenance of the road.
Forever is a very long time, but I'm going to let Shirley address the specific question.
There is some language in the CCNRs that in the event that the county may later decide to do something in the form of a countywide CFD or, maybe would want to go back to using CSAs or just accept the roads into the county road system outright. If something changes in terms of the legal, responsibility for the maintenance, that there would be a way that could happen. But unless that happens at the county level, they are responsible for the maintenance until such time
in lieu of any action like that by the county, the homeowner association will be responsible for the amenities
Yes, and there is a provision also that they can't amend their way out of those responsibilities by amending the CCNRs without county's prior approval.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Supervisor Rivas?
Yeah, so when I look at where the project is, I mean, there is a potential for an equity problem when it comes to the road, because these homeowners, these 6 units, are responsible for the current road that's going to be there, right? But, you know, the way that where the subdivision is located, you're going to have other residents in surrounding jurisdictions and surrounding neighborhoods. They're going to be accessing that road. So how can we expect that this 6-unit subdivision is going to be responsible for maintaining a road that's going to be used by a whole bunch of other surrounding homeowners? And so that's an equity problem moving forward. It's something that we've got to address relatively soon.
Mr. Chairman and members of the board, Supervisor Rivas, as a matter of policy, you're absolutely right. And that's one of the points that we have been asked about continuously. Well, what is the county's policy regarding those types of issues? When does it become a major subdivision? When do we have, why do we have to have HOAs as opposed to CSAs? Those are all policy issues, and those are the things that the development community has been asking us to provide a little bit more clarity about. So the discussion this afternoon, I think, will be a good first step in that direction.
Because it's something we have to address. I mean, we don't want to set a bad precedent. I mean, we're known for setting terrible precedents everywhere, but that's another story. But if at least we're aware of it, and we've got to address that soon.
Mr. Chair, if I could just address one thing. So I because our staff said it in such a way, state law determines when a project is a major subdivision, and that is 5 or more.
Yes.
So now we can arbitrarily, I think, set a number when our policy kicks in. Yeah. So I just want to make that clarification. That the state law states when a project is a major
That
project.
is correct. The board can determine policy
Yes.
In that regard, how it sees fit under state law.
In reference to Supervisor Vitello's question about what Supervisor Messer thinks about neutrality, fiscal neutrality moving forward, what's the difference between having 10, 6 projects together versus one project that's 60 units? Because the cost in the future will be the same on both of those projects. So what's the difference? I think we should look at it at a 10,000 feet view down and say, okay, irregardless if it's 3, 5, or 6 homes, there's still going to be an added fiscal neutrality issue down the road.
Indeed.
And we need to discuss about that. And
I think the board, as a matter of policy, needs to discuss that and provide some guidance to staff in terms of how we approach and answer those types of concerns. You're absolutely right, Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Vitello?
Well, why can't we add that condition into this right now? I still don't see why we don't and can't. And, we have to be answerable to everybody in this county. And the fact of the matter is why we don't have a decent library, why we can't afford funding with our partners for aquatic center, why we don't have the parks that we have, is because we're not addressing it in projects like this. And I don't see that it would harm at all taking the numbers that we have at Santana Ranch and using that and adding it into the conditions of approval.
So I'm going to let Shirley address that.
So as a matter of law, as I said earlier, at the final map stage, there's the case law about the one bite at the apple. The chance to impose conditions is at the Planning Commission, or if it had been appealed to the board could have imposed conditions at the time the tentative map was approved. The final map is a ministerial act where you don't have discretion to impose new or changed or additional conditions. And I think that some of those considerations about revenue neutrality and all of those other things are excellent points that we're hoping you will have a vigorous discussion this afternoon on the CFD CSA item. But for purposes of this project in particular, the county's opportunity to impose conditions was at the tentative map stage.
Well, I don't remember seeing this at the tentative map
Well-
stage because it was at the planning commission.
Right, and that's by the
And-
subdivision ordinance. In the subdivision ordinance, the board has delegated the authority to the planning commission to make decisions regarding tentative subdivision maps.
Then why
Now,
are we
you wouldn't
talking
have
about
to
it
have
today?
delegated that authority, but you did, and so they routinely act on tentative map applications.
Then what are we talking about this today? It seems like just a rubber stamp and we're just killing time.
Because it's the final map, and the board also in your ordinance, the board has reserved to itself to approve all final maps. It's delegated the approval of parcel maps for minor subdivisions to the RMA, but for final maps, that remains with the board. And it is a check to make sure that they have met all the conditions of approval. There is evaluation of things that they submit as required by the conditions of approval, such as, in this case, the CCNRs. And there are, so there are things that, we're bringing to you. And there is a policy question about whether you want to accept the roads or not. So there are things that you are deciding in the action today, but unfortunately, your concern about being able to impose new conditions is not before you.
Thank you, Sharon.
We'll have to deal with that this afternoon because this afternoon we're going to talk about funding of future subdivisions. I think moving forward, the board can establish a policy that we can make sure that the Planning Commission implements at each new tentative map approval. And I think that that's the important thing that we can talk about this afternoon about how we're going to make sure that all future subdivisions are fiscally neutral.
Yeah, because I'd rather talk about the tentative map and the conditions there. If I can't change the conditions here, then why bother,
Yeah, no, you know what? I'll come back to you. Let some other supervisors have some input. Supervisor Munzer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, no fault of the applicant, but I think this board has been very clear that we wanted all projects to have a cost neutrality. Yeah. Why did that not happen with this project? On a staff level, not the applicant level, on a staff level. Why wasn't that addressed?
This particular project has been in the works for 18 months, so from the inception I was not present. But what I can tell you is that on that point, there has not been a consistent practice, Supervisor Munzer, implementing that kind of consideration for one project as opposed to another, which is why I think the discussion this afternoon is going to be essential. I can't answer your question directly. It simply did not happen on this project.
Okay, thank you. So will this afternoon discussion allow us to set policy on these kind of things, or are we going to have to come back at a future meeting after hearing what is discussed this afternoon?
We'll probably have to come back at a future meeting, but I think we can start if the board establishes a clear policy. Then we can develop a policy and start the process to have a countywide CFD.
Because in addressing Supervisor Bertello's comment, I don't want to be looking at tentative maps. I want to set policy, have staff follow those policies, and then have the Planning Commission work out the tentative map issues. But we need to set the policy, and I thought we were clear that we wanted to see fiscal neutrality on all projects, but apparently we need to make that even a little bit more clearer. And again, no fault of the applicant.
Thank you, Supervisor Munzer. Supervisor Medina.
I'd like to make a motion.
Yeah.
There's still more discussion on this item.
Was there any public
And then
comment?
plus we got to go public
There's
comment.
public
too.
comment.
You can make your motion. You have that right.
Yeah. Well,
You want to make a motion
I'll
or
back down and wait.
you wait?
Yeah.
You wait. Okay, thank you, Supervisor Patello.
Well, yeah, you're right, Supervisor Munzer. We have to have effective policy, and what I don't want to have is a continuous line of other applications come in here that got grandfathered in, and we fall further behind and further behind. And that's why we can't pay our employees, we can't hire staff, is because of stuff like this. This is bad. This is bad.
I understand.
Thank you. My 2 cents into the matter is that moving forward, and we'll have the opportunity to discuss this, and it's nothing against this project per se, is that we got to have a little checklist at the end of every application that comes before the board of supervisors, a checklist where the fees paid, check it. What's the dollar amount? Check it. I mean, this is public information, and so the board should have that knowledge that dollars were submitted and it was consistent with every other project. We got to have that. I mean, I've been hearing rumors that one project didn't pay enough and another project paid too much. So we got to stop all that and be fair and be consistent with the public and the applications that come to that planning department. We're doing our part. We're trying to work. We're trying to build up that staff that needs to be appropriately to provide good customer service.
Yes, sir.
But at the same time, no more freebies. We're done with that. We're done.
Message received, sir.
Thank you. Okay, open up to the public. Anyone from the public? None? Okay, I'll bring it back.
Now I'd like to make a motion. Approve the final map for TSM 1695, track number 335.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Against?
Oh, we passed it already.
We passed it, but we could add some
Can reconsider that.
friendly motions to it. So it carries 5-0. Shirley?
So the recommended action included approval of the map, also a determination not to accept at this time all offers of dedication as shown on the map on behalf of the public. Maintenance of the subdivision streets and other common facilities shall be covered by the homeowners association and other funding mechanism. Authorize the clerk of the board to sign the final map and authorize staff to record the final map.
Is that a form of motion?
Accept.
Under
Robert? Under the question.
Under the
Supervisor
question. So, just for clarification, there is no other funding mechanism other than the homeowner association at this time.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. Actually, Supervisor Munzers, can you elaborate on that? What do you mean by that?
In other words, we're not forming a CSD, CSA.
It was an HOA.
So the street lights, the streets are a responsibility of the homeowner association.
Okay.
Yeah, and really, it's too bad. It should be a CFD somehow, but in light of the information given by staff, that's reluctantly I'm supporting it, but it's just one of those projects that why we're in trouble.
Yeah. Before we move on, Louis, is there any more grandfather applications come before the Board of Supervisors?
Mr. Chairman, I have not found any, but I am sure that in the system right now there probably are.
There are.
And so, and I was going to mention earlier, these are things that have been taking place for quite some time. I understand completely the board's frustration, and I share in that. And we're going to work very closely with the new directors to work through those, but that's where we're at right now. So to answer your question, yes, sir, there are.
And they've gone to the Planning Commission already?
Yes.
Some of them have gone to the Planning Commission. I don't know how many have gone to the Planning Commission, but I'm sure a lot of those have.
Okay. All right. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Against? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
This is amazing.
I got the CSA stuff.
It's amazing. Oh, God. Barbara, you guys got to do something legal-wise. Come on.
going to.
You got to do something.
We're just going to introduce you, but we're going to talk later on. We're not going to talk.
Okay. All right. Next item, number 18. Receive update on the staff on the state of bridges in San Miguel County. Receive update on the John Smith Road realignment. There's another one.
Mr. Chair and members of the board, I'm Larry Perlin. I'm one of the two interim directors of the RMA, and this item was placed on the agenda at the request of the board to give the board an update on the status of the various bridge rehabilitation projects that we're currently working on and have been working on for, as you'll hear, for quite some time. In addition, the John Smith Road realignment project status will be provided. We have a PowerPoint presentation that was prepared by Jim Pulfer, who's going to deliver the report to you. we're going to focus really on the bridge projects that we intend to have construction contracts awarded within the next 2 years, and then there'll be some mention of additional projects in the out years, what I would consider to be 3 or more years out. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jim Pulfer, who's been working on these. Jim's been doing I have to say, we've worked together now for about a month, and I've never seen anybody as tenacious as Jim is in working through these federally funded projects and getting these various projects back on track. Many of them have been. We've had contracts with design engineers that have expired. He's found creative ways to get those contracts reauthorized. So we could continue to move forward, and I really feel like we're at the cusp of breaking ground here on a number of these projects. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jim to give the status report.
Good morning, Chairman, Supervisors. Jim Pulfer, RMA Public Works Division. Let's see if we get this going here. As requested, this is a status report for the road and bridge projects currently on our radar within Public Works for the county. And as Mr. Perlin said, some of these, as you are very well aware, have been in the works for, if not years, decades, literally. And we are striving to move them forward, and we've met all the challenges necessary to get them going again at this point. Here is a location map for anyone who's not aware of the span of these. We have the Hospital Road Bridge, which is a very visible project. And then we have out there on Pinoch Road, a bridge, which has its own troubles. And then all points in between, from the North County down there to Pinoch Road. At the end of this presentation, there is a summary sheet where we can go through the list of projects that are on our immediate radar right now. So if I tried to speak about each one, we'd be here all day. Is my intent, if the board is pleased, that I will return next time and I will expand on any discussions and then add more projects to it with more in-depth discussion. Here's a picture of some road projects. These are not bridges. These are road improvement projects that are on our radar right now. And they're in various states of being prepared. We have the John Smith Road realignment, which is another visible project. And then we have some projects that were created through our winter. We have some FEMA repair projects. These, the Cienega Road, that is a mistake on my part. It is not FEMA on the locations 1 and locations 2 of the slides on Cienega Road. Those are going to be funded through the Federal Highway Administration because those are on system highway roads. FEMA is taking care of the off-system highways, and that would be Levers Lane.
Mr. Chair.
Supervisor Menzer.
Jim, the Hospital Cienega intersection improvement. This is the first I've heard of this project.
Excuse me, there'll probably be a couple on here that we haven't really discussed. The reason this is from me is because when we build and construct Hospital Road, there's going to be a significant amount of traffic now using that bridge up to Southside Road. That's going to require some improvements at Cienega, where the Cienega extension goes into where hospital is at, or was it Cowden Lane? You see what I'm saying there?
You're absolutely right, because I've had the neighbors very concerned about Hospital Road, the lack of width to it, the blind curves coming around and it's a project I haven't even bothered to approach you on yet. So I guess what I'm saying is we need to have further discussion on that, because it is definitely an issue that the neighbors are very concerned about.
Absolutely. I've received several phone calls from people in that area, and we're trying to, I've been working with our road supervisor, interim Kevin. We're going to do some traffic calming actions out there, some rumble strips, get some signage up there, and let them know that there's a corner coming up and there's traffic, and they got to slow down coming down the hill.
Yeah.
So that will be the interim, but when Hospital Road Bridge is constructed, we will need to do some intersection improvements, and I just wanted to get that on your radar.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Well, here's one specific. I'm only going to address 4 projects right now, and these are ones that are going to start this year into next year. The Hospital Road project, the plans and specs are approximately 95% complete. They have been 95% complete for, I don't know, about 8 years. And given that, standards have changed. Seismic standards have changed, safety standards have changed, and especially when I get down there, environmental standards have changed. We are in the process right now of updating the plans and specs to bring them up to current standards. When this project was originally designed, I believe it was under I'm going to mix up project. It was under the 2006 state standard specifications. We are now in 2015. It's a massive leap in standards. So we are going to go to 2010. I already got approval from Caltrans on that. Generally, we're a federally funded project. You have to use the latest standard available, and that would be 2015, but 2010 is fine on this one.
And the federal government will pay for those updated standards?
Yes. It's all within our, well, to have savings on our part, I'm preparing most of the boilerplate, most of the bid documents and so forth. Our consultant has already updated the technical specifications, and they've already updated their plans. I've had significant discussions with them about costs, and right now there's not going to be any. And I'm pretty strong on that. We'll do it. We will have to do some work ourselves because there are added costs, and that's understandable. But I'm reallocating funds within their current agreement to cover some of these added costs and to not increase the overall costs for the design of the project. Right-of-way acquisition is complete. The board finished that in January of this year. The right-of-way certification is in process. The right-of-way certification for Caltrans relies on a couple other items that we are working on right now, and that would be the utility relocation agreements and coordination of those utilities. In fact, with the utilities, they need to be relocated to an area where it's not even constructed yet. If you see the red line in that picture, that's the new alignment for the structure on Hospital Road. The embankment and the fill necessary for PG&E and the phone company to move their poles there or to move their utilities underground to that location, it doesn't exist yet. So we have to get into construction, build those embankments, and then we can relocate the utilities there. And then also for the right-of-way certification is necessary to have our NEPA documents revalidated. And because of that, and also in addition, the original mitigated negative deck for this project was adopted by this board, by the board. I don't know if this board has its current configuration in 2010. In 2010 was when the mitigation negative deck was adopted by this board. And with that, there have been new species listed, particularly the California tiger salamander. That's going to require a purchase of mitigation bank property, which we are in the process of working on right now, and we hope to bring an item to your board in the near future, purchasing that land. We do have a time frame of 18 months. We can make a commitment that we will purchase the land within so much time so we can work it into the budgets. Additionally, because of the age of the original environmental documents and the fact that we were in a drought for many years and that has now ended, essentially, Caltrans NEPA folks have required us to make some additional observations. Not studies, but we have to go out and reevaluate some of the work that we've already done to see if there's species of concern showing up in the way of plants and so forth. And we are all working on all of those things right now as we speak. There are time frames for the responses that state Fish and Wildlife can give us, because we need two documents from them, an incidental take permit and a stream bed alteration agreement. Both are in process, and those should be either responded by, we should receive the response from California Fish and Wildlife in the next couple months, or we move on without their approval, because we are allowed to do that. I have seen it where they've responded. They have 90 days. I have seen it where they've responded on the 80th day or so forth. So I've also seen them just say, go ahead. Fortunately, we haven't had a lot of changes down there. We've already gone and looked at it. But there's our schedule down there. There's a small Gantt chart with just the highlights. Our critical path is the environmental permitting. If that doesn't happen, according to the schedule, then based upon that critical point, everything else is going to move back. I have been talking with the Caltrans environmental folks, and I'm about ready to go back and talk to them again and kind of negotiate with them their requirements and their requests, because we're looking at the same thing twice, and it just extends the project, and it just costs a substantial amount of money to get out there and, amongst the weeds again. So if there's any questions on hospital, I'll be happy to take them at this time, or we can wait till the end.
Continue.
This one's kind of the low-hanging fruit. Shore Road and San Felipe Road, the bridge rail replacement on Santa Ana Creek, and correct me if I butcher the one, Tequisquita Slough, bridge rail and approach rail replacement. This project, I've seen documents for this project dating back to the 90s and actually the 80s. This has been around many years. It's been defunded, reobligated, and it's gone back and forth. And for various reasons, I can't tell you, I don't know. I did see that at one point I thought that there was the thought, based upon design documents I saw prior, that the original rails were just going to be able to be unbolted from the side of the structure and then a new rail bolted on. That's not correct. New bridge rails have to be able to withstand the impact of a vehicle, and there's certain test levels by standards, test levels 1, 2, 3, and 4, and based upon the speed of the road that the rails are on. And bolt-on rails aren't going to make it. All right. I've done these type of projects before, and what usually has to happen is what's called deck strengthening. That's why I put a little picture here of what deck strengthening is. They actually have to remove a portion of the existing deck and then put more reinforcement steel in it, and then re-pour the deck, and then they pour the barrier. This is to take the energy that is absorb the energy that's, when a vehicle hits the barrier, it transfers that energy into the deck. Otherwise, we have like what we did on San Felipe Road at Tequisquita again. That rail, when it came, a car impacted that one, and when that rail came off, it broke the deck. That's why the K rail's up there right now, and that's why we just haven't bolted another deck on there, another rail on there. It took wedges out wherever one of those anchors were at. And since I don't have as-built for that bridge, I don't feel comfortable, just bolting anything on the K rails. Is the safest protection for the public on it. And that was a little bit of a digression, but I can tell you that at a minimum, deck strengthening is going to be required for that structure when it is done, or it's just going to need to be replaced. Any questions on Shore Road and San Felipe? Again, this is a project where the specs are 95% complete, and they've been that way for a number of years. This is one of the projects where the agreement expired, and in April 11th, your board made a public interest finding. that it would be in the best interest for us to pursue renegotiating with the current consultant and finishing this project. We are in the process of preparing those agreements right now as well. The right-of-way on this one is simple, it's complete because it's all within our right-of-way. That's why I say this one's a low-hanging fruit. The CEQA is in progress and it is being performed by RMA staff, planning staff. We don't have to go out to consultant on this one. It is not, it's anticipated that we will get a categorically exempt CEQA document on this because we are replacing an existing and upgrading a safety feature. And I don't know the chapter and verse of where that's called right now, but it does allow for that. We also have on-call consultant agreements that we are in process right now. And that is where we will do if adopted by your board, these consultants will be at the board's disposal to do engineering work. And one of them would be construction management. We don't have to do the whole, we do it once. We don't have to do the interviewing and the whole dog and pony show, if you will. Every time we want one, we do it once. We put them on agreement. We give them a task order. They come back to us with their proposal. Then we'll bring that to your board and say, go ahead and send them a notice to proceed. And it's usually, it expedites that process quite a bit. Utility verification and relocation planning is underway. It's essentially done. We had to move a little bit of the rails because there is a phone line. We were able to fit it in, though. So then this one's supposed to begin this summer. Is there any questions on this one? Limekiln Road Bridge. This one is anticipated to begin next spring to next summer. The plans and specs on this one are 65% complete. This one is essentially actually on track, but it has been in the works for quite some time. There's a bit of stagnation with it. We are doing the right-of-way engineering at present, and the CEQA M&D document was adopted by your board on April 11th, and we are now applying for our permits. It is over a waterway within this county, and this county has sensitive species within all of its creeks. And this one will require 404, 401, and the whole bevy of number of permits. Again, this is a smaller project that I anticipate using on-call consultants for instead of having to go out to a full-on RFQ again. And this is all acceptable under Caltrans and the federal funding mechanisms. And then the next one would be, any questions? I'm sorry.
Yeah, Jim. So this rose to the top of the list, more or less, just because so much of the project is already done as far as the studies and everything?
Yes, this one is moving along, and it rose to the top because we got to get them built. It's just, it's like the shore road. It's low-hanging fruit. We can build it. Why does it have to keep waiting?
Okay, and I just want to make sure because Limekiln Road is not a heavily used road,
right?
But it's something we can get done quickly and just move on to the others.
And we can get it off our list.
Very good, thank you.
Because there's other more complicated bridge projects out there that are on our list, and I anticipate them taking more of our time.
Okay.
And so if we can get this one out of our way, let's get it out of our way.
Very good.
John Smith Road alignment. We know that this is a project that has been around for some time. The engineer was here earlier. I saw plans that were based on the 1992 specs originally, so this one's been in the works for some time from what I can see. There was a set of plans from 2002, and then we had an update again, I believe, in 2010 or 12. The plans and specs, I say 95% complete, but they've been 100% complete several times, but every time you wait, standards change, and there's new additional requirements. So we have to update these. We have to update the specs. We have to update the plans to current safety and seismic standards. The right-of-way acquisition is complete. I need to verify that yet, though. To be forthright, my confidence level in the paperwork is not high, so I just need to check it. And council helps me with that mightily. The CEQA is in progress. The sequel on this is what threw the brakes on this project from what I can see the first time is with the California Tiger Salamander. And the fact that there was really not any mitigation bank properties available in the area. There are now properties available. And again, I'm trying to arrange a group buy for all of our projects to get this done. To do that, though, we need the incidental take permit and that permit number, which has to be completed by our environmental consultant. The engineer, the design engineer and environmental consultant, both of their agreements have expired. That's not problematic with the funding source because it's not federally funded, so we're okay. We can just go right back out and retain them again if that's the board's desire. I want to go back to the species.
Jim, I got a quick question.
Sure.
This
Please.
realignment is directly, is it perpendicular? Yeah, perpendicular, right? To the road that goes to the church?
Yeah, San Benedict. And boy, there's a typo. It's not Lime Kiln Road over Pescador Creek. You can see.
Not a two-lane bridge either, but not a two-lane bridge either.
It is not a two-lane bridge.
Okay, so it does.
But I want to check. There's some things that I need to do with the design to verify it. I'm going to. I want to check some of the design information used because it's going to take a lot of wear on John Smith, and so I want to make sure it's substantial and will last us a significant amount of time.
Jim,
Species. Go ahead, sir.
I have a question. The current alignment, my understanding that asphalt will be torn up
Yes.
and removed?
If it's not your understanding, I would recommend, if it's not in that project at this point, yes, it will be.
Okay,
It
but
will
it will not adversely affect any of the property owners?
That's already your right of way.
No, but I mean, any of the property owners do not
No,
need...
we'll remove that and we'll store we can use that asphalt.
No, I'm not worried about the asphalt. I'm worried about, are there any property owners, neighbors that come out on the abandoned part of the road and have their and I don't remember. There's a couple of neighbors, and I don't remember exactly where their driveways start, whether it's beyond the project site.
At this point, I can't answer that.
All right. Well, maybe we'll have a
perfectly,
discussion.
But from a standpoint, or from my perspective on that, we would have to work with the current landowners to make them whole.
Okay. All right.
That would just be practice.
Okay.
We just can't go in and ruin somebody's access that way. We'd have to work with them to make them whole in one manner or another. Species require mitigation. Again, this is CTS. We spoke of that. Also, I just received information of there are vernal pools along this stretch, and there was prior discussion regarding that, but when you have vernal pools, you have fairy shrimp in California for the most part, and that is a species that Fish and Wildlife is going to want us to look at. So with that, that's why I put begin con 2017, 2018. Again, my environmental permits are the critical path on this one. If we run it against the shrimp, then it could take us a while to fix that. My goal is to get it opening, constructed this year. Also, even as it is planned right now, construction starts in November, and if we have any winter like we had this year, we're going to award a project and immediately suspend, the contract until it dries out to where they can work. So that's where that's problematic. Just to be upfront with you, there's weather and there's species.
Yeah, well, it's one of my favorite pastimes to sit out there in the field and watch them.
In your shrimp boat. Anyway, this is the current project summary. Again, this has a couple on there. Well, several of them I did not have more detailed slides or more detailed discussion. If you see any project on here that you would like more information on, please ask me. I have a lot of this retained in my head. I can put it down in slides at future presentations, and I expect this to be a document in progress through each board meeting. I don't want to have to rehash each one. I can give you quick updates. On those Gantt charts, I can show percent completes, and I can submit those, and then we can add more detail to any other project as you desire.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Supervisor Botello.
Yeah, I've talked to you about one or two of those projects already. so I won't go into those. But it just became very apparent that I have a problem in Carr Avenue with that bridge, and I don't see that on the project list. And are we going to see that addressed, and probably with emergency funds, I would think, because
Well, that's one project I am aware of that, and I have not had the opportunity to go out and look at it personally. I will be doing that, and then it will be added to the list once I get an idea of what needs to happen with that structure. It's a pretty amazing thing to end up with a hole in your bridge deck.
it is probably something that could be added on to the disaster relief that USDA hopefully is provide to the county. What's in the middle of the bridge is a steel plate now, and you remove that steel plate and you look right down into the water.
Right. Correct. I wouldn't. We will look at all possible funding, and if it is applicable to the disaster recovery, or if it's just a age-related deficiency. FEMA and Federal Highway Administration engineers will look at it as well, and their determination. I've debated with them already on different projects, win some, lose some. That is one that is on my radar. I got a text message with a picture of that. And, well, that's nice. That's interesting.
Yeah, well, that when I was on the planning commission, that bridge was supposed to have been replaced by a developer, and that condition has never been fulfilled. The development never went in anyway, but it's an old bridge. It's a heavily used road. It's an arterial type of road that people use when 129 has issues and problems, and even 101.
We'll move it up on our list.
One-lane bridge, and it structurally has some real problems.
Okay, well, we'll put together an estimate on whatever is required to bring it up to standard and to the use of requirements, and we'll bring that to you next time.
Okay. And let me know what's going on that one. Thank you.
We'll do.
A bridge like this, you will find the funding, correct? Or is it something that the board will need to discuss?
I will bring to you options.
Okay.
And a recommendation, and then it would be your board's discretion on how to pursue this.
Thank you. Supervisor Munzer? No.
There are limitations to what can be funded or by what mechanism and what program. There has to be certain ratings. That's one of the things I'm looking at Carr Road is its bridge inspection report. Caltrans uses that to see if it can be programmed onto our list, and then we seek federal funding or state road funding for that.
Got it. All right, I'm going to open up to the public. Anyone from the public? No, close it. So this is a presentation. Any comments from the board?
My only comment, Jim, Larry, James, thank you. Thank you for this. This means so much to me that we...
Welcome. And I hopefully we'll be able to pull this off.
Well,
I'm pretty confident we're making ground, and we're making headway. Just there's a lot of looking back and trying to move forward at the same time.
I understand, and again, I just want to thank all three of you so much for this presentation and for the work that you've already done on these projects. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Chair.
you, sir.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on. To number 19.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board,
I'll save you the time. No.
Okay, thank you very much.
Go ahead, please.
Doesn't have a choice.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, you have before you item number 19. This is the request for the COLA from Waste Connections. I've invited Kathleen Gallagher, who is our consultant on this project from CSG, to provide the board with any additional information. As you know, the COLA increase falls under the 2014 agreement. So I'll go ahead and let Kathleen elaborate on that.
Good morning, board.
Each year, as you probably remember, Waste Connections on March 1st provides a COLA adjustment to our county. So this year we received a request for a COLA adjustment for 2%, which equates to $74,405. The details are spelled out in our landfill operating agreement, section 6.2. It defines what the cost indices are that that Waste Connections can utilize for that adjustment. You see in your staff report what those indices are. If you recall, the landfill operating agreement has a ceiling of 6% and a basement of 2%. So even though the calculation is actually 1.65, we are, by the landfill operating agreement, required to have a 2% adjustment. So the recommendation is to approve the adjustment, the 2% adjustment, which, as I said, equates to $74,405. We have verified the mathematical accuracy of this adjustment. On a secondary note, what Waste Connections also has been doing annually is providing a change of law costs. This year they have not submitted any change of law. From a historical perspective, last year you might recall that they requested a $305,000 adjustment. After some back and forth between Waste Connections and myself, it actually was reduced to $55,000. We brought that to our ad hoc committee and recommended denial of that change of law because they didn't follow the procedures in the landfill operating agreement. Your board approved that they would not approve that change of law last year. So that's some historical perspective on change of law. But again, this year there is no change of law request. So to pay for the COLA, the board has a couple of different options is to raise our landfill gate rates. If you recall from our landfill operating agreement, we have 100% control over what our in-county rates are. We do not have control over what the out-of-county rates are. So we can raise the landfill gate rates to increase and cover this cost. We could make a payment from our budgeted landfill fund, which is our Fund 301, which has approximately slightly over $2 million currently in that fund, or the board could approve a combined approach of raising the landfill gate rates and as well as make an adjustment from the landfill fund.
Chairman, if I may ask a question right there, while it's on my mind.
Sure.
What is the cost of the out-of-county debris compared to the cost of the in-county coming in?
So the out-of-county tonnage, as you might recall from our prior discussions, is approximately 80% of our tonnage coming in. We have the Waste Connections provides the COLA adjustment for in-county only to us, so we do not have what the out-of-county is, but I can certainly request that from Waste Connections.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see. I think we need those numbers just to see, to verify the numbers that we have on the staff report.
Yeah, we do know that from the in-county that this is the numbers that they're providing. So certainly I can request that and bring that back, and or submit it to the ad hoc committee for review, whatever the pleasure is.
If we're going to go that direction, we could table this. We could table this until we get that information.
Okay. Per the landfill operating agreement, we are required to take action for the rates to be modified by July 1st. So certainly I can bring that back to our next meeting.
Okay.
Kathleen, are we... does the operator has to inform us of what he is charging? His for the out of county.
I thought
that
they are not required to, but what we have done is looked at what the gate rates that are being charged to other firms that are bringing tonnage into our landfill. So, for example, Gilroy and Morgan Hill, we looked at what those rates are. It's public documents to see what their gate rate is. We do know it's a lower gate rate than what we're paying.
Oh, okay. All right.
I'll let you. I'm sorry, Catherine, because any agreement they have with out of county, it's a business agreement between them. So I guarantee you'll probably be less than what your number's saying.
Yeah, well, I do know for certain. We're paying approximately $64 per ton for our waste going into John Smith, Gilroy, Morgan Hill are paying approximately $24. So it's significantly less. Very much an imbalance of what typical operators charge. Typically, they're charging most favored nation rate to our own in-county. But that is not the way the landfill operating agreement is currently designed and written.
No, I thought we were having, either we could not get the rates at all, or we were having trouble getting the rates. I wasn't quite sure what delaying this a week would accomplish, or to the next meeting.
Supervisor Munzer? Supervisor Patelli, you want to respond?
Yeah. So before we even move forward with this, I'd like to have a little bit more information from Waste Connections as far as total tonnage, the breakdown of the tonnage between county and out of county, and detail the expenses with total expenses of operation, and how that compares with what they're charging the COLA to us, because it's not quite enough. It's not here.
Sure.
Thank
This is typically, absolutely, I will bring that back. This is typically what they've been providing since the new agreement has come out. Yes.
It's be a new game though now.
Absolutely. And I will get that information. Thank you.
Supervisor Medina?
Nothing.
Supervisor Rivas? Okay, let me open up to the public. Not surprised, Marty.
Never miss an opportunity to talk about garbage. Since this is about rates and paying, I'm going to make some assumptions, and if your staff has to correct me, I hope they do come up here and correct me. So I'm going to make some assumptions, and we pay for our trash to go to the landfill, and the assumption is at one point in time, a portion of that payment went to the closing fund of the landfill. Otherwise, if it didn't, I don't know where you were getting the money. Okay? Now, you made an agreement with Waste Connections for them to take over the closing fund, and in exchange, you got to take out $4.8, $5.2 million, depending on which document you read. So, when that happened, I don't think we ratepayers got a reduction in the amount of money we had to pay. So what happened to that money that was going into the closure fund, since you don't need a closure fund anymore? The closure fund is being paid for by Waste Connections in total. That was the argument you used to take the $5 million out. They pay for everything except for the Class 1 landfill. They bonded it up, and they bonded it up for whatever the requirement was, 30 years, whatever the requirement was. That was the deal. And in exchange for that, you let them bring in 1,000 tons a day. The question is whether it was a dime or a dollar, and I don't know what it was. What happened to the money that we're still paying because our rates haven't gone down? So where is that money? Thank you for your time.
Okay. Anyone else from the public? Okay, I'll close it. Does any members of the staff wish to respond to that question?
The resolution, when the Board of Directors approved the new landfill operating agreement, the resolution, this was in April of 2010,
authorize the $4.2 million. It was actually $4.2 million to go to the general fund. As you recall, the budget in 2010, 2011 had a deficit. So one of the actions of the resolution was to release that $4.2 million that was held for closure, post-closure, that the county was obligated to hold. Again, for closure, post-closure, once the John Smith landfill was closed, to be released into the county's general fund. That's what happened with the rates at that time. Excuse me, not the rates. It went into the general fund.
Mr. Rich, and I'll say this because he actually talked to me earlier. Mr. Richard wants to know, moving forward, where's that money moving forward from the rates? Thank you for your comments during public comment, Mr. Richards. Thank you. His question wants to know, moving forward, in relations to the rate, does the rate compose of a dollar amount that's going to the post-closure account?
It does not.
There's none. So then his argument is, if it does not, then why shouldn't the rate payers have a drop in the rate?
The way the structure of the landfill operating agreement at that time was, there was not a direction to reduce gate rates at that time. We do have control, the county does have control of what our in-county rates are. So if it is the direction of the board, that is something that we could do. But obviously, we would have to look at the full picture of what's happening with revenue to the county. And those are some things that we can certainly bring back to the ad hoc committee for discussion, and then to the full board for further discussion if that's the pleasure of the board.
Thank you. Supervisor Munzer?
No.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. What's the pleasure of the board?
I'll make a motion to continue this item and direct our consultant to bring back the information that I requested.
Is there a second?
I'll second it if there's a date certain that it comes back. I will second it if there's a date certain.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Will May 23rd work for you, Kathleen?
Yeah.
Bring it back?
We can.
Yeah, so
I'll get
we'll
with
set
them
up some
today.
meetings prior, and then we'll make sure that we meet with the ad hoc
May
and come back on
23rd.
the.
Okay.
I'll
Right.
incorporate that in my motion.
Okay, and then I second it.
Okay.
Right.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against, motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next one. Okay, shoot. See you. Jim?
Larry.
Larry, I'm sorry, I apologize. Larry. Oh, there it is. Larry, 20, go ahead.
Item 20, yeah. Mr. Chair, members of the board, we flipped a coin to see who would be bringing this item back before the board, and I lost. So here I am.
Good choice.
This was on your agenda at the previous meeting, and there was a motion that was made to not approve the contract extension. And we think that maybe by providing some additional information to clarify why this extension is really necessary would maybe be useful in having the board reconsider its prior action. Most of the work associated with this contract amendment is related to the constructability review that was done by by Vanner. Who was brought on, I think, late in the design process, and there were a number of suggestions and comments that were made to really tighten up the plans and specs, so that it would improve not only the bidding process, but also hopefully minimize the amount of changes that would occur during the actual construction. And so in the report, you'll note that there's a statement on the second page that spending money on constructability review and doing this work at this time will save a significant amount of money during construction. I think it's indicated here that on average 7 times what the review would cost. So I've taken a look at the construction contract and the 3 amendments that have been or the two amendments that have been approved. If this amendment is approved, it would increase the contract by another $39,835. But the total percentage increase from the original contract, if this were to be approved, is only 6.4%, which for a project of this size is really is not out of the ordinary. On the second page of the amendment, which I believe is page 203 of your agenda packet, there's a section that identifies what the modified scope of services are that this amendment would cover, and you'll note the additional effort that's required to incorporate the comments from the constructability review, as well as some additional work that apparently was necessary due to incorporating emergency backup power and running that through the air pollution control district. So there was some effort there, and that was not originally anticipated in the project or in the design. So we're bringing this back before you because we're sort of at a standstill right now. We can't. The architect really can't proceed in getting all of the changes made to the plans from the comments on the constructability review if we don't authorize this. So it's back before you, hopefully with clarification and maybe. Provide sufficient justification to warrant your approval of this.
I'm going to go to the list of members who voted no. Supervisor Rivas, have your position changed?
I didn't vote no. He voted yes.
Oh, he voted yes? Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize.
Why don't I go first since I pulled
he
it?
voted no. The motion was to deny.
Oh, okay.
He voted no.
Okay. Sorry about that, Supervisor Rivas. I apologize. Anthony?
Yeah. Well, I pulled the item off consent because I felt it was short on information as far as why these amendments are being are needed. And since that time, I've had a meeting with RMA. I've met with the administration and talked about this a little bit further as far as having more detail in some of these reports. What has me very nervous about this jail project is that we're on real thin ice as far as the resources available for this project. And if we get out there and the consultants think it's too easy to just come back for amendment after amendment and they think they're cutting a fat hog here, we're be in trouble. And that's why I pulled it. I'm a lot more satisfied with the information that was just now provided as far as the necessity of this. And going forward, I think our staff and people who are work on this project hopefully have a message that we have to watch the cost of these jobs. And we really need to keep a real close eye on a spending plan going forward and understand that as this project goes ahead. And it needs to go ahead right away. I mean, today. Any delay in time is a cost us more money, and it shouldn't be acceptable. So I'm satisfied with the explanation and could join Supervisor Rivas in supporting this.
Can you, if it does move forward, can you give us a, God, I forgot the words, some type of chart, estimated to completion of what has already been incurred and what's your expected estimated expenditure to complete the project. So we need to get that on a monthly basis. So
okay.
There's no surprises down the road. Supervisor Rivas?
Yeah, the only comments I have to make is, look, I share your views, Supervisor. I mean, it's really frustrating when we're talking about whether it's this project, whether it's the firehouse, whether it's bridges that have been, they're 95% there for the last decade. Government moves slow, and this is a problem that not only our county faces, but every county faces in this country. And so it's moving forward. And so, the reason I move, although I was frustrated and I supported the action last meeting, we talk about the increases and the delays. All we did was delay our decision 2 weeks, and we increased the project even more by that. I'm not joking. And so, I share your frustrations, and hopefully we can work together with staff to, try to be as efficient and cost-effective as possible. But unfortunately, it's a business of doing government. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Rivas. If no other questions, let me open up to the public. Anyone from the public? No, close it. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chair, before
Sure.
you only went to Supervisor Patello that supported.
That's all I needed. One vote.
I guess we don't count. No?
This one, no.
Sorry, brothers. These got today.
My question, Larry, is do you foresee any more amendments to this contract as the project goes forward?
Mr. Chair, if I may. Mr. Chair, can I comment to that, if I may?
Yes.
So yesterday, actually, there's a weekly meeting that has been occurring on this particular project per the advice of the board. So in that meeting, there was discussion of trash compactors, a few other items of discussion that may warrant another change. But those are things that potentially could be a cost savings down the road. And I talked to Jerry from Vanner, and there's some clear reasoning for that. So, there may be some potential changes, small changes that warrant some architectural changes. But again, I made it very clear to them that unless there's some factual reasoning for there being cost savings down the road, we don't. We need to keep moving forward with this. Again, this is an ongoing thing. Like any kind of a home build or any kind of a build, there's always going to be something that comes up that you'll have to make some adjustments on. But in this particular case, I do know that there are some discussions, and I know that the jail jail staff have actually looked at that, looked at plans, and looked at other things to see if it warrants it here in San Bernardino County. So to answer the question is, I would say that most likely there will be, but there's going to be some financial reasoning for it if it does get presented to the board. Now, I can tell you also in the discussion is that I had some discussions with Adam concerning the possibility of holding back moving forward with the bidding process, going out to bid, because we haven't finalized a CM yet. And I've actually reached out to different companies to actually look at bringing the CM on. I made it very clear to him, in light of moving the project forward, we have to move forward. So this Wednesday, tomorrow, bidding should progress and move forward. So we're not holding anything up. When the time comes to come back to your board, I will come back to it, hopefully soon, probably within probably the first meeting in June is my goal, or at least in June sometime with a CM recommendation. But we don't want to hold the project up. So that's kind of my 2 cents.
Thank you.
Supervisor Medina?
Nothing, sir.
Okay, what's the pleasure of the board?
Do they take public comment already? Yeah.
Move approval of staff recommendation.
I'll second that motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Okay, the other two items, we're going to have to wait till 1:30. We got 10 minutes. We're actually going to break for lunch.
Well, we could do a closed session.
Yeah, we could.
Well, if we could do one item, we will go to break for lunch.
Yeah,
One item.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to meet in closed session regarding closed session conference with legal counsel, existing litigation, subdivisions A and D1 of section 54956.9, name of case of Ward Homes versus County of San Benito et al., Superior Court of California, County of San Benito, case number CU 15-00099. Closed session conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, significant exposure to litigation pursuant to 54956.9. Number of cases 1. It's authorized by subsections D, 2, and E1. And the last one I had on the agenda, number of cases was 2. That's being changed to just 1. It's closed session, conference with legal counsel, anticipated litigation, initiation of litigation pursuant to D4 of subdivision 54956.9, number of cases 1.
Anybody from the public wish to discuss those items that we're about to go into closed session? None? Okay. We will go to closed session. Okay. Oh.